We begin this hour with fear intensifying in Congress following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Both Democratic and Republican lawmakers are expressing concerns for their own safety and taking greater security precautions.
It is about the fact that the security protocols and the ways that we think about it and conceive of it are for a bygone time. They're not designed for a stochastic era. They're not designed for a digital threat environment era.
When you have high-profile members of Congress on either side of the aisle that are getting death threats daily, like we are, regardless of your political affiliation, you should get added security.
Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz, who has faced death threats in the past, ramped up his security and stopped holding outdoor events earlier this year. He says, quote, "People are scared to death." Threats to members of Congress were already on the rise before Kirk's assassination. The U.S. Capitol Police said it's on track to work through 14,000 threat assessment cases involving members by the end of 2025, which is an increase from around 9,000 last year. House Speaker Mike Johnson assured lawmakers that his office is undertaking a, quote, "very thorough review of the existing options and looking into how to enhance security to ensure members' safety." Joining us now, Tom Manger, former U.S. Capitol Police Chief and MSNBC law enforcement analyst, and Eugene Robinson, MSNBC political analyst and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for coming to The Weekend. Chief, let me start with you and just ask the question, is there any way to truly safeguard the security of the members of Congress, especially in this environment, and especially when the threats have been increasing from 9,000 last year to 14,000 right now, up to right now?
Yeah, there has to be a way to enhance their security, and during the 4 years that I was at the Capitol, we saw that increase, that dramatic increase in the number of threats, and we reacted to it. I mean, when the members of Congress are at the Capitol doing their job in Washington D.C., that's as safe as we can make them. They're pretty safe at that point, but when they travel, when they get back to their home districts, when they have events in their home states, that's when they're more vulnerable. And we put a number of things into place to enhance their security during those times when they were not at the Capitol. One of the big things that that Congress did was to, and this was right after January 6th, was they gave the Capitol Police fairly robust funding to work with state and local law enforcement agencies so that when a member of Congress had an event in their home state, we could contact them and request their help and, in fact, reimburse them for their help. So we were able to actually get the help that we needed, get the added security at those events for the members of the Capitol. But I can tell you, when Mr. Pelosi was attacked, there were a number of other smaller incidents that folks don't even talk about that we investigated. We put things into place to enhance people's security, and the fear from the members of Congress certainly was evident. And this latest killing in Utah has put everybody on edge.
Chief, I want to stay with you quickly, though, about the funding. We know Speaker Johnson said earlier this week that officials were going to be expediting a planned review of member security and that they were going to try to implement a pilot program. Have you been involved in the creation of this pilot program, and can you speak at all to the contours of what exactly it looks like?
Well, I can tell you that 5 months ago, I sat in front of the Senate and House Appropriations Committee, and I requested a fairly significant increase in my staffing for what we call dignitary protection. That is, those are the special agents that provide protection details to the leadership of Congress. And what we had was not what we needed. I mean, we needed to add to that. I think that was evident with a couple of incidents that we dealt with where we knew that we needed to enhance those protection details. So I requested that in my budget. And I will tell you, at the time, it didn't get much traction. There was not much support for that from the appropriations committees nor from the members. I'm thinking that maybe that's changed at this point.
Eugene, this conversation about cost is always on Capitol Hill, but they always manage to find money for things that are really important. So I imagine that they will be able to find the cost. But it feels like, after the Minnesota lawmaker was killed last month in her own home, Democrats asked for more protection. Now it seems like Republicans are on board. So it feels like the political will is also matching the moment, that Speaker Johnson is like, okay, we actually have to, go under the couches, figure out where this money's going to come from.
Absolutely. I mean, these effects are cumulative, right? You can go all the way back to Gabby Giffords.
Yeah.
What happened to Paul Pelosi in his own home. I mean, it's this threat environment that we live in is something that I think all sorts of people are grappling with. So this happened on Wednesday. On Thursday, I was in Madison, Wisconsin. I was at an event they have every year called Idea Fest, and I was doing a conversation with David Maraniss, our former colleague from the Washington Post for many years. Not a huge audience, but as I was going into the venue, I saw a couple of police officers who hadn't. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting, and that's actually kind of nice." And I spoke to the organizer, who had said that after the Charlie Kirk shooting, nothing was going to happen in Madison, But he just said it just felt like maybe he should bring in a couple of officers and beef up the security a little. And I think that just tells you a lot about how this potentially is going to impact security. I mean, it's
just for any public speakers, any public figures.
Public speaker anywhere. I mean, this was like a really benign environment, but it was kind of in the back of my mind.
I mean, you have seen a little bit of a shift amongst Republicans this week in calling for more security, but there are still people. I mean, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said that at the end of the day, members are just not going to have a Secret Service detail that would have necessarily prevented something like what we saw this week with Charlie Kirk, and that we all need to turn the temperature down and have more, this is quoting James Comer, more civility in political rhetoric. I mean, when you look back at the course of your career and when you started covering Washington to where we are now, can you describe the evolution of political civility and in our rhetoric?
Well, certainly, the rhetoric is more toxic and more violent now than it has been during the time I've been in Washington. A little further back in history, I mean, there have been times when things were very heated. There have been, you go all the way back to the 60s when assassination attempts on Gerald Ford, on when Ronald Reagan was shot. So violence in American politics is unfortunately not a new thing. But we do seem to be, if we were sort of in a trough, we seem to be coming. We seem to be close to a crest now. It certainly seems to be increasing, and one wonders how everybody says tone it down, and so absolutely. So will we really do that? How are we going to do that? And where does it start? I mean, the answer is it has to start with every individual and the way they speak about their political adversaries, and not as adversaries, not as enemies, not as evil. But frankly, and I'm not being partisan here, but that's not what we heard from President Trump initially after the Charlie Kirk shooting. I hope that changes. I hope we begin to speak about one another in a more civil and constructive and nonviolent way.
Chief Major, before we have to go, since you were a former U.S. Capitol Police chief, I'm just wondering, given what we've been talking about and what we've been going through this last week, as a former chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, what concerns you the most about where we are right now?
Well, I think that when you see the number of threats, the way they have grown, I mean, back around 2017, 2018, there were, if we had 2,000 threats, that was a lot. And now we're talking averaging 9,000 and 10,000 a year, with this year, projected to be above 14,000. So that's what worries me, that the vitriol is resulting in people making concerning statements, making threats against members of Congress. Because, again, those 14,000 are just threats against members of Congress. And the Capitol Police investigate every single one of those threats. And and I'm sure that part of what the Capitol Police are planning is to add staffing to those investigators as well. They can't handle the caseload unless they add additional people. Whatever happens, people are going to understand that they need to have security assessments done for every event they do. Even if they're going to an elementary school, just have a town hall meeting, there will be some kind of security assessment done to say, what do we need to have? What do we need to put in place? But just remember, that costs money. It's people, it's equipment, getting the folks that are trained to do that kind of work. All those resources cost money, and so. But that's the direction I think that we will see our country go.
Chief Tom Manger, Eugene Robinson, thanks so much. We'll definitely be following up with you to continue this conversation.